Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning.
I can, as long as only one speaks.
Good morning, Randy.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Good morning.
Hey.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Board. My name is Shannon Wetstein, and I'm the manager with Morrison Soil Water. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, I will do my best. If it gets to a point where it's not, if you cannot understand me, please give me a call. Okay. So basically, this property is within the 3-mile boundary, which is the Army Compatible Use Buffer area. ACUB has been in place for 16 years now, since 2004. There are over 30,000 acres enrolled right now in the program. Basically, it is a program to keep Camp Ripley operational, and it was put into effect to protect the mission of camp and to ensure that development encroachment would not cause the camp to lose some of its ability to train at this location. So there's been millions of dollars invested into our program alone, aside from what's been invested in the community and what we benefit from camp. So ACUB is a voluntary program. Willing landers contact our office, and the parcel is within the boundary. We have them sign a landowner interest form. Then we use to rank the property. Camp goes through several criteria, and based on the location, size, proximity to waterways, and proximity to other parcels that are already in the program is what it is ranked off of. Basically, ACUB has also been supported by the county, the local land use comprehensive plan, water plan. It's identified that the county would support the mission of ACUB through land use controls. And like you said, there's been a substantial amount of community investment in this program. So looking at Monroe's property specifically, Monroe's property is within the 3-mile buffer. So it does qualify for the program. It is also within the priority 1 area of ACUB, which means that it has been ranked higher because of the air flight and noise contours that are within camp. And for those folks that live in priority area 1, there would be more disruption at their homes than there would be in priority 2 area or outside of camp. And these areas were just remapped last year with having priority areas instead of 3 within that 3-mile buffer. Now the goal of that priority 1 area is not to have 100% of those properties enrolled in the program, rather to have 75% of the parcels within that priority area 1 in the program. So that's about 40,000 acres. Monroe's property would most likely rank very high because of the amount of acreage, because it is within priority area 1, because it's also on a corridor that would liken it to development pressure. Moving forward, I guess, playing that importance that the county has a commitment to ACUB. Our office, obviously running the program, has a commitment to ACUB and wanted to let you guys know how this property sits within that landscape. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. It's a good question, Randy. So it's looking at this parcel, it was recently purchased by Monroe's. So at this moment, we would be able to look and talk with the landowner about that process, but they're not eligible to participate in the program until they've owned the property for 1 year. And this is a requirement by the Board of Water Soil Resources. They're the ones that hold the perpetual easement. It's a requirement for all of their easements that the property owner own it at least a year. Commissioner Winter, right now the program is in a transition, so we currently do not have any funding. We're in the process of signing a new cooperative agreement with the National Guard and the state. Once that's executed, I'm expecting that we'll have additional funds. But at this moment, we do not have any money for rolling easements into the program. Commissioner Jelinski is correct. What the easement is doing is purchasing the development rights on that property from future residential or commercial development. But farms can continue to be farms. That acreage can be farmed. Commercial businesses that are excluded or homes that are excluded from the easement area can continue to rebuild buildings, even add new buildings within that approved area that's been excluded from the actual easement. But within the easement, the agreement is the landowner has full the rights to develop that portion of the parcel. Yes. So, Commissioner, the property that Monroe's now owned was not the ACUP program before, which means that there's not a permanent easement on that parcel. The land would be, whether it's owned residential or agricultural, would be up for consideration if the landowner was interested in ACUP. Correct. Yep. That's a good question, Commissioner. Right now we have over 250 willing landowners within the 3-mile ACUP boundary. I don't know how many are within the priority 1 and 2 areas yet, because when they redid the map, they're working on sending us those rankings for priority 1 and priority 2 and the criteria. So he's definitely not the only one. Moving forward, I do believe the property would fairly high because it is so close to camp and because it is in that priority 1 area. We have a couple of grant applications in the works right now that would give a substantial amount of money to the program. If they were awarded, we could potentially be working with the Monroes if they were interested in working with us. But the process still takes between 6 and 12 months. We go as long as 18 months, but that's our average. So there's some different considerations aside from just selling the development rights on the parcel. You know, there is the time that it takes the process. So if we did receive money, I do believe this parcel would rank really high. But again, it would have to be that the Monroes would willingly be looking to participate.
Thank you, Shannon.
I'm just going to give a comment of my own on this. ACUB is a great resource, I think, for Camp Ripley, and it's a noble thing because we want to keep Camp Ripley within our borders. Within Morrison County, we want to keep the doors open. My problem I have is ACUB is a voluntary thing. If the landowner chooses to put his land into ACUB, collect money for his land that he has, that's great, and that's probably something that I would do. But unfortunately, Mr. Monroe doesn't want to do that with his land, and I believe that he has the right to come before us and ask for a rezone. And yes, we have the opportunity to say yes or no to that rezone, but I have a hard time telling people what they can and cannot do on their own land, and even though it's probably the right thing I should do because of the ACUB within our boundaries, and that we're a sentinel landscape and all that stuff, but it's a voluntary function, and he's choosing not to use that voluntary function. He doesn't think that he wants to make a development, which we shouldn't be considering in the back of our heads, but it's hard not to consider that. We're here today to think of the rezone. So Shannon, I don't know what to say. I understand what you're fighting for too, but I have a hard time with that personal property rights thing that that this gentleman is asking for. I don't know if you can add to that to make me think differently or not, but that's where I'm sitting on this one.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I would say that from a rezoning standpoint, again, whether it's residential or ag, would still consider it parcel if the landowner is interested in the future. It would not change how it ranks. But again, going back to the amount of support and what ACUB means and the commitment that the county's made to it as well, there's substantial reasons to limit development in this area.
Okay, did you hear what she said, Amy?
Yes, she said, given the county's commitment to ACUB, there are substantial reasons to limit development in that area.
What did she say previously to that about we could rezone this and he still could have the capabilities of joining ACUB?
The zoning district doesn't have any bearing on the ACUB program. So if we're just biting this off from a rezone standpoint, the fact that this property would perhaps change from an agriculture zoning district to a residential zoning district would not have any bearing on its eligibility or desirability to enroll in the ACUB program. It would be the next step, the actual platting process, where the ACUB program probably becomes more front and center as far as, because now we're looking at the actual development of the property.
And at that time, size and all that stuff comes into matter?
It would be, if a plat were approved, it would probably fall off of being eligible because
right.
I believe there are some minimum, and Shannon, you can weigh in here, it would probably not be desirable for that program because what they're trying to do is secure acreage that does not have any residential development on it. So if it had a plat with several residences on it, it probably would not meet the criteria for enrollment.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Blaine?
Mr. Chair, you know, I'm looking at this in the, you know, from a couple of perspectives here. You know, I think the kind of a basic question here is that because this property falls within the 3-mile radius around, or in that 3-mile border around, which is that ACUB border, that does not, my question is, does that give Camp Ripley the right to dictate to us whether or not we could allow for a proposal of development within that property? Whoever wants to answer that.
Mr. Chair, I'm hoping Shannon can speak to this and come back. But again, this is a voluntary program. I think it's really more for the county a policy decision as far as the place Camp Ripley has, the role that they have, and how we regard and or recognize the ACUB and or Sentinel landscape as far as the overall impact to Camp Ripley. I know we do go on record within our comp plan and our water plan recognizing ACUB as an integral part of Camp Ripley and its function. Shannon, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
That was really good, Amy. I would also add, you know, the state and federal designations that have been applied to the area as well. So the more we support the program in the long range as a county, the more potential funding opportunities for the county, for the residents within the area, both the Sentinel and the ACUB boundary.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Amy.
Shannon, I have a question for you. So this is a voluntary program, ACUB is, and there are goals as far as how much land, you know, percentage of land that within the priority areas that you want to secure. And but if those goals aren't met, what does that mean? Is there any ramification to that?
Basically, Camp Ripley is in a really unique situation looking at other military installations around the country in that we have a desired end state of so many acres and a percentage within each of those priority zones. Camp Ripley in our ACUB program has the full potential to achieve those end state goals. Whereas I would argue other military installations in other parts of the community or country that have encroachment issues, it's opportunities to limit those developments have passed. In our area, because of the rural nature and character of our area, the opportunity is still there to deliver on those goals. As far as what it would mean if we did not achieve those goals, I haven't ever had that discussion because whenever we talk about our program, we talk about it and the hope that within 10 years we will have achieved our end state goal.
Any other questions for Shannon? Commissioner Blaine?
I don't have any other questions for Shannon, but I'm trying to balance this a little bit in respect to the respect for the ACUB program, which I remember very well as this was rolled out in 2004 when I represented this district in the state legislature. So I'm very familiar with this. but I'm also very familiar with the fact that this is voluntary. And one of the huge discussions that took place when ACUB was rolled out back in that '04, '05 timeframe was the impact this would have on the tax base for surrounding land around Camp Ripley. And so, you know, I have to start to look at this, that what impact does this have if we're going to look at limiting development within the buffer zone, or the 3 mile zone, and then now this is, that zone's been extended with the Sentinel plan out 13 miles. The possible impact of a tax base and development within the county. We're talking, you know, a 53,000 acre base that we have bordering land on basically on both sides of that, or basically all the way around that. That there is significant impact there. I'm not expecting that we're going to receive PILT payments because on any of this property, because we're limiting development on that. And so I want to be careful. You know, we're certainly respectful and understanding of the mission of Camp Ripley and the impact that installation has on Morrison County in more ways than just economics. But I also want to look at we also have, you know, certain rights or responsibilities in how we manage the property and work with the landowners who own the property that surrounds that installation too. So, thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Commissioner
Chair.
LeBlanc. Any other discussion for Shannon?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Jelinski?
and I don't have another question for Shannon either, but I would comment on residential development, which is not on the table today. However, as you said, it's kind of hard not to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it. Part of ACUB, as I understand it, is to say, you can live on this property, you can build on this property, you can have a wonderful location for a home on this property. We just don't want to have this as a general development, if you want to call it that, as a residential development area with homes. Why? I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but let's just pretend that you or I or anyone on this board or all of us purchased homes in a development that is not there. And I or you or anyone else have a child, and by golly, that aircraft that's flying over my house is very disturbing to me. We now start petitioning the legislature to get that aircraft path to go a different way. What are we doing? What are we doing to the United States military, which we all support? I'm not here to dictate to the military how they should shoot, how close they should be, or how loud they should be, how loud they shouldn't be, how low their aircraft should be within what aviation allows them to be today, only to find out that they're flying over a residential area, perhaps, that is causing a great deal of disruption. Who am I supporting? Am I supporting a property that is not there, a development that is not there, and is not on the table today? And thank you for reminding me of that. Or am I supporting the United States government? And in this case, the United States military? I'm going with Camp Ripley. Not only am I going for Camp Ripley for that part of the discussion, I was certainly, as we all were, at the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission member from District 2 voted against this on a totally different aspect. Nothing dealing with Camp Ripley, as we're very clear, because Camp Ripley and ACUB, if you will, was not ever part of a conversation, but farmland was. The Planning Commission member for District 2, in particular, happens to be a farmer. And particularly, and I cannot quote this, spoke that night of sites and smells of a farming community. A development, which we are not talking about today, would absolutely cause Amy's phone to ring, because there would be sights, there would be smells in a farm area that would cause some type of a commotion. There's not a doubt in my mind. Because that District 2 Planning Commission member, who was appointed by myself and this board, if you will, did not support this because of Camp Ripley, because of ACUB, I just need to just tell you, Mr. Chair, I can't support this either. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Jelinski. Commissioner Blaine?
So, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Jelinski, I appreciate your comments, but I also, I don't want to set that precedent that, if we take that position that we're going to hear from a resident who locates in the agricultural district, because I'm a farmer myself, and if we're not going to allow for residential development in the agricultural district of the county, because we're scared that somebody's gonna complain or bitch because of smells, tractors on the road, lights in the field at night. I think that's a slippery slope or a dangerous slope to go down. When I look at this from that perspective of Ripley being there, and I have the training planes that fly over my farm and my house and my barns multiple months of the year. I accept some responsibility for the decisions that I make about where I choose to locate and where I choose to live. And I would expect that the residents who would look to live within that corridor around Ripley, that would, let's say, would buy a home that's in Ripley Township in this summer or in the coming future, that they also accept that responsibility, that where they choose to live, they will have to understand that this military installation is there, and that's a part of living there. Just as neighbors to me who choose to build a home and live in the agricultural sector also understand that there are sights, there are smells, there are lights, there are sounds that are a part of that environment too, and they accept that responsibility as part of living there too. So I give that perspective with great respect to you, Commissioner Jelinski, but I think we have to be careful what slope we want to slide down here.
Commissioner Wincher?
I appreciate both comments from Commissioner Blaine and Commissioner Jelinski. I think we're kind of going down the wrong slope here. Again, if Shannon's there or Amy can help me out here, if we approve this zone, and then he's gonna be coming, again, we're gonna bring this up since we're talking about it, he wants to bring this development forward, okay? Let's say I can't remember, there was 30 houses, 3 houses, whatever it is, makes no difference to me at this time. But let's say the applicant doesn't like what he, as the planning commission approves, or how he can get in there. Again, he had an opportunity to say, yep, I wanna bring in 10 houses in this area. But he would only qualify due to septic systems or whatever, the type of soil, to 3. That's possible, correct, Amy?
Mr. Chair, the next phase, so if the rezone is granted, then yes, you would see a plat come before you. And there are standards that need to be met for that road layout, width, turnaround distance that will take up portions of that green space. the ability to have two standard septic system areas on each lot. There may be some wetland, there may be other limitations. So really, the property will dictate how many parcels or how many lots there can be. So a rough drawing, which was provided in the rezone application, just simply for visual, may not be possible given that. And so really that remains to be seen as far as how many lots there actually are once that phase of this project would start.
Thank you, and then my point being is that, so once Mr. Monroe presents that, and whatever the design comes up, if he doesn't like that, then he still has the opportunity, has nothing to do with the rezone, he could go to ACUB again and he could apply. Am I not correct for that?
Yes, that's correct. The rezone would not affect his ability to enroll.
And that's my point, is I think we're putting the cart in front of the horse here. Let's see what it all bears out on the rezone, and then we'll deal with down the road. And again, if Mr. Monroe doesn't like what that he can present to us, then maybe he'll have that opportunity yet one more time to decide if he wants to go in ACUB or not. Thank you.
Commissioner Wilson?
I still struggle with this, but I do think that I'm going to vote against this. And my reasoning behind that is that I would look at that a little differently. I mean, I want to support Camp Ripley, but in 2004, this program went into effect. I think that was the date you said. And he purchased this land within the last year. So I'd probably have a different outlook on this if it was somebody that's had this land for, before ACUB became there and chose not to do this. But after purchasing the land, knowing that Camp Ripley's there and all the things that we've agreed to anyway, that's why I think I'm going to have to vote against this, because I don't like the idea of telling people what they can do with their property, but I also feel like it should have been researched a little more because that was already in place. So just my comment.
Thank you. Steve Kowski, would you like to weigh in on the public service that's available for this property?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My perspective is a little bit different, commissioners, in that I received notice of the Planning Commission meeting, and they are looking for input and my opinion onto the question of, is there adequate infrastructure for the development? And so I wanted to go through kind of what I went through when I made my opinion to the Planning Commission through Amy on the original hearing.
Very good.
Deb, could you go to the next? This is a map of traffic counts in the area. You can see our County State Aid Highway 49 up on the top end. It's showing 295 vehicles per day on that west end. It drops off to 170 on the east end. As you look at some of our other County State Aid highways, County State Aid Highway 48 is 415 vehicles per day. 47, which serves the main access into Camp Ripley, you can see on the very west end, almost 3,000 vehicles a day. East of 45 is 860 vehicles per day. So you can see that 49 has a relatively low volume of traffic compared to our other county state aid highways on our system. So the next sheet, what I look at is to see whether the development would create a change in the design standards of the roadway. And so with what was being proposed on this piece of property, we would anticipate approximately 120 vehicles per day additional on our CASA 49. If you look at the different categories and traffic volumes, the roadway currently would fall into the projected ADT of 300 to 749. with the added traffic volumes that would be generated, we would still be in the same category. And so, in my opinion, that the development does not result in us having to change the design of the roadway. The roadway that exists out there is adequate for that volume of traffic. The next thing we looked at was our safety. This is a report through MnDOT. It's called MnCrash, which is the reported accidents. You can get it for any location on any spot within our system. These are reported through accidents through law enforcement. And for the 10-year period from 2010 to 2019, a half a mile on each side of the intersection of 155th and Arkansas 49 had no accidents during that time period. So the other issue becomes, is there adequate sight distance for traffic coming onto 49 at 155th? And what we utilize is a stopping sight distance to determine whether that is the case. And what stopping sight distance is that a vehicle traveling, let's say a vehicle traveling westbound on 49 would pick up an object at the intersection of 155th, and would there be an adequate distance once they pick that up visually to be able to stop? And what these formulas do is they assume an object that is 2 feet high at the intersection, and that the height of the eye of the vehicle that is traveling is 3.5 feet high. And so when you take that and you lay that out actually in the field, you could go to the next picture, Deb. This is Beacon, where we actually laid that out. And you can see that if there was an object at that intersection, 2 feet high, and you're coming westbound on 49, you would have the distance would be 733 feet that you would have in order to perceive that and then to stop. Looking at the table, that would give you a speed of you could be going at 66 miles per hour for that to be at an adequate distance to be able to stop. Now that is a worst case scenario because it's assuming a passenger vehicle with a 3.5 foot height of eye and a deceleration rate of a commercial vehicle at 11.2 feet per second. So the table is based on kind of a worst case scenario when you get, and it comes up to that 66 feet or 66 miles per hour. What we did do is we did make a comparison of a couple other types of vehicles. If you take a dump truck with a height of eye of, it's almost 7.5 feet, a little over 7.5 feet, you get 875 feet of distance to be able to pick up an object and be able to stop. And if you actually go through the calculations, that comes in at about 72 miles an hour. And this is adjusted for the grade because it comes in at a sag. It's not like it's on flat terrain. There's adjustments that are made because it's coming in with those grades on each side. And so based on this review, I gave my opinion to Amy that there is adequate stopping sight distance at this intersection for traffic on 49. And that was how that was determined.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions for Steve, gentlemen?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Jelinski.
I would simply like to comment, thank you, Steve, because I got to tell you, I've had a lot of concerns about this, I've had a lot of comments about this, but what an explanation. Thank you for that.
I agree.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Steve? All right, thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Miss Amy?
Mr. Chair, the third part of this meeting was to consider additional public comment that was submitted to me in between that first hearing and now. I did email you all of the public comment that I had received and to give you a chance to look that over. And then I also did send a copy of all of that public comment to the applicant as well. So he is in receipt of that too. I also have that displayed up here. So what I'd like to do is not read every one of these just because you all have had a chance. If you have had a chance, please let me know if you haven't. And then I'll just go through and acknowledge each comment that was given. And then if you want to back up to one of them, then you can let Deb know and she'll get it at the appropriate slide. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So the first comment that we have is from Darvin Keir, and he is representing the Ripley Township. And he essentially is saying here that the township has chosen to support the mission of ACUB when it comes to this rezone. The next comment is from James Cole. He is also representing himself in the capacity of a supervisor for Ripley Township, and then also as a resident that owns land in Ripley Township, and he has stated that he is not in support of the rezone. The next comment is from Jamie Schilling, and he has commented that if he were to vote, he would vote against the rezone. The next comment is from Joanne Donna, and also from William Weidenbach. And they are essentially what they're saying is they are against the rezone. And this one had a little bit more detail, so you can certainly circle back on this one if you'd like. The next comment is from Jeff and Donna Schultz. And they are also listing reasons why the rezone should not be granted. And then also enclosed some information on the Camp Ripley Sentinel landscape, which also was emailed to you. Okay, and then the next comment is from the neighborhood essentially, and which was headed up by Bernice Dumont Brodeur and Sarah and Mike Schultz. And there also is a long letter, and this goes with the slides that you also received, and so each slide has an explanation of what their points are for those, and so if you want to circle back on that and go through that, I'm more than happy to guide you through that, or Mr. Chair, if you'd like to. And that, I believe, concludes the additional comments that I received. Of course, you were at the Planning Commission meeting at the first hearing and heard the comments from the public there and also any written comments. So that, again, is still a part of the record and for your consideration for this today.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did Jean have something to add to?
Jean is here for another agenda item
Okay.
that I have.
All right. Well, enjoy watching us, Jean. Mr. Monroe, would you like to make some comments on the things that you've heard?
Yes, thank you. My name is John Monroe, and we purchased this property in November of last year. I think somebody had questioned when that was. It was late last year. At the time we purchased it, whether or not it's relevant, we were not aware of ACUB, but learned about it shortly after that. And I actually went to the office up on, it's at Haven Road, I think, yes. And Lance, Amy
Chisholm.
Heinonen helped us out there. And actually, I was there no less than 3 times, just getting details and things about the A-Cub. And I fully understand the importance of Camp Ripley, how important it is to Little Falls and Morrison County, as well as Minnesota and the nation for defense training purposes. Fully support that, absolutely no problem. Where I struggle a little bit with the A-Cub is the value that they place on an acre of ground in Ripley right now is 1,700 and some change. 1760 comes to mind, or 1770, right in that ballpark. And listening this morning, the importance of the A-Cub is, I think, understood by everybody in the room here and from their office as well. But where I struggle with it is twofold. Number one, if the 3-mile buffer is that important, shouldn't that 1,700 be up to market value? Basically purchase the land. If they need it, they should have purchased it when it was for sale. And number two, if myself as a landowner puts the acreage into, or a portion of it, into A-Cub, landowner's still responsible for taxes. So we're getting paid a discounted rate, and forever and ever we get to pay taxes on something that cannot be developed, or nothing can ever happen to it other than recreational use or something like that we have right now. So I guess that's my couple of comments on the A-Cub program. I think if the 3-mile zone is that important, maybe they should raise the bar a little bit. That's my thoughts. Steve Bukowski answered the question on some of the concerns in these letters and did a great job on that. I did just an unofficial 55 miles an hour. I had 10 seconds one way and 12 seconds the other way when I came up on the intersection. I looked up on a computer. I mean, everything's on the computer nowadays. Takes a fully loaded truck, semi-truck, about 6 to 6.5 seconds to stop. That's reaction time and everything involved, braking and everything else. So Steve did a great job on that. I won't fog up the air with that, but so that concern is done. I guess the answer or the what's before you today is really quite simple. It's either a yes or a no. You've got I feel a responsible landowner in your county that wants to invest a substantial amount of money into developing some housing, which the county's comprehensive plan says it needs. The county has been growing over the recent years. So we're trying to just provide a nice neighborhood for that. I live in a neighborhood very similar to what I'm proposing here right now, except it's about the same size, but there's about 28 houses where I live. So we're obviously smaller lots, right around an acre and a quarter. It's a great neighborhood. I like my neighborhood. Like any small neighborhood, you get to know your neighbors, you help your neighbors when they go on vacation, we watch their dog, whatever. We all help each other. That's all I'm proposing here. I'm not out to put in, as some of the people at the planning and zoning meeting said at the meeting and also after the meeting out in the hallway, I learned just as much. There are some of their concerns, but I'm not looking to put a trailer park in. Nothing against trailer parks. I used to live in one years ago, so I'm not slamming that, but a little more upscale than that. It'll be stick-built. The covenants is when I come forward with a plan, we'll have that type of thing addressed. So, yes, understand the neighbors are against this. Opposition is out there. We're all human beings. Human beings resist change. That's just the way we were all wired. I understand that, and I expected it. But I think this is a very nice spot for it. In relation to having the golf course across the road, that's a plus. They're actually smaller lots over there. I think those are acre or just slightly over an acre, and I'm trying to keep this around 2 acres or a little more than 2 acres per lot. So I guess that's really, that's what it boils down to. That's my side of it. I purchased the land and considering going forward with this. So,
Gentlemen, got any questions?
with your blessing.
Any questions for Mr. Monroe? Amy, got anything further to add?
Mr. Chair, I don't unless you have any questions from me, if you want to circle back on any of the comments that were received and you have any follow-up questions in regard to those.
Gentlemen?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Jelinski.
If I may, besides everything else, and I respect this board more than anyone can ever imagine, I also respect the Ripley Township Board and all township boards there are. Ripley Township Board, I don't believe, just woke up one morning and said, they're not gonna support this. They are not supporting it. So I also have to respect that in my decision-making process. I certainly respect Mr. Monroe, I got it. I hear exactly what you're saying. I do. If I didn't know anything at all about ACUB, I probably could devise myself to think differently. I certainly respect Commissioner Blaine. Understanding absolutely, this is farmland. Well, what are we gonna do? Nobody can ever see a tractor again. Nobody can ever see or smell again the sights and smells of the country. I got it. I fully understand that. But for me, the cards that are laid out, the folks that I've talked to, it will dictate my decision here. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jelinski. Anything else, gentlemen?
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to remind the board that in order, when you're considering a rezone, those need to pass with a super majority vote. So I just wanted to
Very good.
remind you of that.
We'll take a roll call on this. Commissioner Jelinski,
No.
Commissioner Blaine,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
No.
Commissioner Lemire, aye. Commissioner Wincher,
Aye.
motion did not pass.
Did not pass.
Very good. Next on the agenda? What would you like to? Okay,
All right.
next on the agenda.
Okay, the last item I have is request approval of the attached abstract of abatements. This was part of your board packet, and we do have Jean online. Hopefully the audio is a little bit better. These are all tax statements that were pulled because there was something that needed to be fixed before their tax statement went out. So just as a reminder, these 5 have not received their tax statement yet because some errors were caught in the office, and those are detailed for you, each individual example. Do you have any questions for Jean on any of these?
Gentlemen,
Mr. Chair, I'll move on this.
motion made by Commissioner Jelinski. Second by Commissioner Blaine. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. We'll get those changes taken care of,
Thank
and that's
you,
all I
Amy.
have.
Very
Thank
good
you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Ms. Monroe.
Gentlemen, we're gonna take a 5-minute,
All right.
or 7 minutes. 7 minutes and 30 seconds. tough one for me,
Well,
too.
like I say, they would have put him
Hey,
through
Sean?
a lot of stuff that they would have passed, because I know Dave would have said, okay, you can do 3 acres of land, who knows?
Yeah, I think we saved him a lot of grief, but
Well, but I'm
beside
saying,
the point.
yeah,
Just a picture of Sean, right?
not we, you did.
I did, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Don't put
It was
me in with you.
It was me, you're right.
Jeff, I can understand him because that's in his district.
Well, you had my reasons.
Even though your reasons weren't very good, you know, that's fine.
That's fine, that's fine. Like, I know. Peggy, I met your sister the other day. I told her how good you were, and she knew that. So, especially having to work with Sean, I said, you know.
Randy, we're,
Yeah, I know they're good.
right now we are.
We're mic'd too? Hello, hello. We're live, huh? Well, fired up. There's 3 of us here, Mike. Go ahead. Oh. But we're live. We can't talk about the
Yeah,
sheriff.
hold it, you got those two talking. You better go get them.
Yeah. I think I can, let's see, I'm scared to press a button. I might call the sheriff's department here.
We'll bring the meeting back to order. Next on the agenda is a proclamation proclaiming April as Distracted Driving Month in Morrison County. Good morning. Oh, I'm behind one? I'm too far. Hands of Hope
All right.
proclamation. Ms. Gruber.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'm going to present that if you don't mind.
Oh, I would love
Our guests
that if
aren't
you
here
would.
today. So the proclamation is for National Crime Victims' Rights Week, which is April 19th through the 25th of 2020. If you would mind, I'll just read that.
Yes, please.
Whereas providing victims with knowledge of their rights and available services further strengthens their ability to recover by restoring a sense of self-empowerment. Whereas victims who feel understood and supported are more likely to disclose their victimization, seek services, and participate in the justice process. Whereas a multidisciplinary response involving collaboration among victim service professionals, criminal justice officials, legal professionals, medical and mental health providers, and community leaders is essential to reach and serve all victims, especially those who are marginalized, have disabilities, or live in remote locations. Whereas National Crime Victims Week, April 19th through the 25th of 2020, provides an opportunity to recommit to ensuring that all victims of crime, especially those who are challenging to reach or serve, are afforded their rights and receive a trauma-informed response. Whereas Hands of Hope Resource Center is hereby dedicated to strengthening victim and survivors in the aftermath of crime, building resilience in our communities and our victim responders, and working for justice for all victims and survivors. Therefore, be it resolved that the Morrison County Board of Commissioners proclaims the week of April 19th through 25th to be National Crime Victims' Rights Week.
I'll make a motion on that, Mr. Chair.
Motion made by Commissioner Wincher,
Second.
second by Commissioner Jelinski. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I really have no discussion other than the thanks that I know that this entire board gives to all of the people that work at Hands of Hope, and what they do and the time commitment that there is spent on this. Phenomenal job.
Very good. Anything else, gentlemen? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda,
Mr. Chair, you have me again for the Sexual Assault Awareness Month proclamation. Whereas sexual assault is an intolerable violent crime with public health implications for every person in Morrison County, either as a victim, survivor, a loved one, or a community member. And whereas the voices of those who have been victimized of sexual violence must be heard through public awareness and education activities. And whereas in fiscal year 2019, Hands of Hope Resource Center served 195 new sexual assault victims and their loved ones in Morrison County. And whereas nearly 3 out of 4 adolescents 74%, who have been sexually assaulted or victimized by someone they knew well. And whereas no one person, organization, agency, or community can eliminate sexual violence on their own, the Board of Commissioners joins Hands of Hope Resource Center in believing that all Morrison County residents must be a part of the solution to eliminate crimes of sexual violence. Now therefore be it resolved that Morrison County and the Board of Commissioners hereby proclaims April 2020 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in honor of all Morrison County residents who have made a conscious and dedicated decision to end sexual violence.
Gentlemen? Motion made by Commissioner Wilson,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Jelinski. Any discussion? Again, we'd like to reach out and say thank you for all they do, and it's appalling actually how many sexual assault victims we have in our community, and we are grateful for everything they do. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next up before us, Public Health. Welcome, Emily.
Hi.
Distract-free driving month? Or did you want to do Sean's?
Okay.
Do
All right.
Sean's?
Sheriff's next.
Okay, that's all right. Good morning, Sheriff.
There's a little button on the side, right there, one of those. You
I'll
gotta
get
make,
you sooner or later,
you maybe
Emily.
need to hold it just slightly, just hold it down a little bit, the button. Just hold the button down just a little bit, just give it a little patience.
I think it came on,
Just a little bit, all right.
the chair, members of the board.
Morning, Sheriff.
So today we're going to read a proclamation for Telecommunicators Week. We got Peggy Zibney with 29 years of experience. Dispatchers have to be patient, and I can tell you that because Peggy trained me in back in 1999. So we'll go ahead and read this. So it says, whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services, and whereas Morrison County dispatchers efficiently coordinate emergency services for both man-made and natural disasters to ensure the health and safety of our community. And whereas public safety dispatchers are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. And whereas public safety dispatchers are the single vital link for our police officers, firefighters, and first responders by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information and ensuring their safety. And whereas while enduring shift work and frequent emergencies, Morrison County dispatchers continue to perform their duties in a dedicated, diligent, and loyal manner. Now therefore, we, the County Commissioners of Morrison County, do hereby proclaim in conjunction with National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, the week of April 12th through 18th, 2020, and commend the devotion, contribution, and services of the professional 911 communication dispatchers who serve Morrison County.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to move on this one.
Motion made by Commissioner Jelinski,
I'll second, Mr.
second by
Chair.
Commissioner Wincher. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair? Sorry, I just can't keep quiet on this one.
Oh, that's great.
Was in the business for a long time and had the honor, respect of working with both the sheriff and with Peggy for a long time. And I can't say enough. I happen to know just a little bit of what they go through. And for those that think it's just sitting on a chair all day long, should just keep thinking that. Because that's wonderful that that's the perception that's out there. But that's not even close to what it is. Peggy's brought her supervisor along with her today. Both of you together know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not just sitting at a desk. I can't thank you. I can't even come close to thanking you for what you do. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you too. I remember sitting in on one of these school shootings, and the dispatcher came and talked at the group, and it's really amazing at how the dispatchers are really the ones in control. You know, everybody else is out there, but trying to keep everything going. The dispatchers are probably the unknown heroes in the whole thing because they have to keep everybody updated and stuff, and it's remarkable what you do, and I know everybody can't do it. So thank you very much for the ones that do.
Commissioner Blaine?
Mr. Chair, thank you. You know, we can be proud to say that that the proof is in the pudding here in the sense that it was just a few months ago where we had one of our dispatchers recognized statewide for their efforts in saving the life of a young man and working with a young child in that effort. So as great as this proclamation is and timely, and that this board also recognizes the fact that we have good people doing good things that are recognized across the state for their work, their training, and their efforts on a daily basis.
Very good. Commissioner Winter?
And myself too, and I know Peggy personally, everybody always thinks that this job is kind of easy and that things are getting easier. Well, I'm holding up probably what's making it more difficulty is these cell phones, because upon every time there's an accident, again, being aware that what the dispatchers, they may get 5, 7 calls, 10 calls, and there might be an emergency one that's more important in there, but they have to answer them all because of the fact that they're coming through. So years ago, when we were kids, you'd have to run to try to get a landline, and those people, nowadays, everybody sees an accident, they see something else. I mean, you're gonna get many, many calls, and these dispatchers have to answer every one of them. So again, thank you for the work you do.
Very good point, Commissioner Winter. They get all types of phone calls because of cell phones. I just want to say thank you too, as a fireman and a EMS. I appreciate you getting us to the scenes. I appreciate you staying calm, and you're the unsung hero, and you have our complete gratitude. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Any other discussion? All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you.
Sean, your job's important too.
Now is it Emily's turn? All right.
Good morning, Emily.
Good morning.
Morning, Emily.
Okay, I am going to present a distraction-free driving proclamation. Usually I have students here to help me out, but they could not be here with us because of everything else going on. I just want to say that traffic safety is still important, even though we're handling other emergencies as well. So a proclamation by the Morrison County Safe Roads Coalition in partnership with the Morrison County Sheriff's Department and Morrison County youth leaders. Whereas the safety and security of the citizens of Morrison County and surrounding areas are vitally important, and a large percentage of our citizens regularly drive or ride in motor vehicles on our roadways, and distracted driving occurs when drivers divert their attention away from the task of driving to focus on another activity instead. And distracted driving can result in injuries and deaths to motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists. And the health and well-being of our citizens are a direct result of increased awareness about the dangers of distracted driving, and Minnesota's hands-free law made it illegal for drivers to read, send texts and emails, access the web, and talk on the phone without using a hands-free device as of August 1st, 2019. And according to the Office of Traffic Safety, each year in Minnesota, distracted or inattentive driving is a factor in 1 in 5 crashes, resulting in an average of 45 deaths and 204 serious injuries. And the Morrison County Safe Roads Coalition supports efforts to help raise awareness of the dangers of distracted driving, to reduce both the number of distracted driving crashes and to better educate drivers. And the Morrison County law enforcement will be participating in an increased enforcement all month to reduce the risk of injury and death caused in traffic crashes related to distracted or inattentive driving. And distracted driving is a serious, life-threatening practice that is preventable. And to reduce the number of crashes, as well as improve driver safety, motorists should dedicate themselves to adopting and maintaining safe behavior while behind the wheel by avoiding distractions such as phone calls, texting, eating, drinking, adjusting vehicle and music controls, and reaching for items. And in order to reduce the number of crashes as well as improve driver safety, Morrison County motorists should dedicate themselves to adopting and maintaining that safe behavior behind the wheel. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Board of Morrison County Commissioners of the great state of Minnesota, do hereby proclaim this month of April 2020 Distraction-Free Driving Month in Morrison County. and we call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens.
Gentlemen,
I'll make that motion.
motion by Commissioner Wilson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Blaine. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, here we are again, talking about something that we today we should not be talking about. We absolutely should not be talking about distractions brought on by this, and that's what we really ultimately are talking about. There's all kinds of distractions, I don't have to tell you that we have in this world without this, but this is primarily what we're talking about, is the use of a cell phone while driving. Not changing our radio station, not turning our lights on. We're talking about utilizing a cell phone, whether that's to talk on or whether that's to text on. I get the opportunity to speak at a couple of different classes from time to time, and I'm honored to be able to do that. But I love to bring up at the end of every time that I speak is, and what about this? Nobody today needs to have this turned on while they are in a motor vehicle. Nobody. Not me, not you, not anybody needs to have this turned on while they're in a motor vehicle. I appreciate everything that you do, Emily. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
It's come a long ways, so thank you much.
Yes, thank you. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you so much.
Next before us is a proclamation as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Morrison County. Katie?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board.
Good morning.
Whereas child abuse and neglect continue to be a problem within our society, and whereas April has been declared National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and whereas Minnesota has initiated many efforts to promote child abuse prevention programs within counties, and whereas Morrison County has promoted such programs and recognizes that children and families are an important part of our society, needing the support and protection of our community. And whereas Morrison County recognizes the dedicated work of community professionals, neighbors, and extended family that provide assistance to prevent and intervene in cases of child abuse and support parents. And whereas special thanks given to Morrison County Child Protection Team, the Prevention Council, and the interagency members for the efforts, funding, and provision of parenting education and support through Circle of Parents support groups, families program, kindness retreats, educational websites, and the child abuse prevention curriculum provided to the schools in Morrison County. And whereas the Morrison County Child Protection Team recognizes and supports the efforts of parents, extended family, friends, and neighbors of children to provide a safe and loving environment for children. Now therefore be it resolved that April is hereby declared Child Abuse Prevention Month in Morrison County.
I'll move on this, Mr. Chair.
Motion made by Commissioner Jelinski,
Second.
second by Commissioner Blaine. Any discussion? Commissioner Blaine?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Katie, we're on the front lines of protecting the people that can't protect themselves, and in this case, the children of our society. It's unfortunate we have to continue to work hard at this, but we also are realists in the sense that these things do take place in our society. So I want to give you my sincere thanks for your efforts on behalf of the children of Morrison County, that we continue to fight for them and protect them.
Very good. Anything else, gentlemen?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you,
Mr.
Katie.
Chair, if you'd be so kind, will you be okay if we moved on to the social service report bypassing public health initially? So Katie can do her report. I know in
Sure.
terms of the board packet, it's public health is next. So if we could do Katie. So I had her did put some information together, given the fact it is Child Abuse Prevention Month, on our work in children's services. So I'll turn it back over to Katie.
So
what I tried to do is outline kind of the whole scope of our involvement when we get a call regarding a child concern, kind of through the end of the case. And so the first slide will actually be the second one, but talks about the reports that we get. So our agency receives reports from a variety of people. We receive reports from people who are mandated reporters, which means that the job that they hold requires them to report any concerns that they have. So that would be doctors, people that work in schools, law enforcement, things like that. We also get reports from voluntary reporters who aren't required to make reports, but out of, their conscience feels like they need to, whether that's a neighbor, a family member, a friend who sees something that's concerning. So you can see that our overall reports went up pretty significantly in 2019. So there was 884 reports that we received just concerning children's needs not being met, whether that be by abuse or neglect.
Mr. Chair, if I may interrupt, the question I have with these reports, or if somebody calls in, so if I talk to Mr. Jelinski and I don't really like him, and he's got his kids in their little trouble, but he does it great. So if I call in and I report to him, I think he's abusing those kids, even though I probably don't, but I just didn't like what he said to me or whatever. What happens, what's your process of saying, I gotta check on Mr. Jelinski just to see, or do I call in as somebody that I'm not gonna give you my name, or do I have to give my name to report? You could explain that a little bit?
So, to answer your first question, that does happen occasionally. It does not happen often where somebody reports or makes an allegation out of retaliation. The state does allow us to do what's called extended screening. So if we get a report that we feel is questionable in any way, or we maybe don't have quite enough information to make a decision based on what we have, we can do some extra outreach to other, so let's say the call was from a neighbor and they're making some allegations. We might be able to reach out to the school or that child's doctor to find out, is there some validity to what's being reported or what's not, or is there not? To answer your second question about, sorry, I drew a blank on what you're saying.
If I have to give my name?
Yes,
if
of
I'm-
being anonymous. You absolutely can be anonymous. You do not have to give your name. However, state law does protect reporters, and so we don't ever share that information. So even if you give your name, it's more helpful for social services, because if we have additional questions, we can call the reporter back. But that name is protected. Even if a case goes into court, we redact that information so that a reporter's name is never released.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Mr. Chair, Katie, I do have a question, seeing as though we brought in the doctors. What kind of a relationship does social services, in this case, have with the doctors? Are you able to call me, a doctor, and can we actually talk about an ongoing case? I mean, doctors don't talk that way, but to you, in the business that you're in, and I'm very clear, are they allowed to talk about that?
Yes, so extended screening does allow for that. They're not sharing all the details of a case. They're, we're usually asking some pretty pointed questions.
Yep.
And then if we would open up with a family, then we would get a release of information to talk on a broader spectrum.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Okay. So so those 884 reports that we received, we're required to screen those within 24 hours. That is the state guideline. And so out of those, so we meet every morning and then Fridays in the afternoon again to ensure that we are screening all those timely. The pie chart shows what % is screened in and what is screened out. So you can see that the majority at 79% are screened out, which means they don't meet the criteria that the state has outlined for what constitutes abuse and neglect. 21% of those do meet the criteria.
And also, just to add on, that we do notify reporters what we do with the reports. We're required to notify them. So if you don't leave your name, you would not be notified, but if you do leave your name and you request to be notified, we can let you know if we screened it in or out. So we do have that communication as well.
So the reports that open into child protection assessment or investigation, last year there was 175 of them. So out of those 884 reports, 175 of them were screened in, meaning they met criteria and that there was evidence that abuse or neglect was occurring. I did make a note at the bottom of that slide, back in 2017 is when there was some changes at the state level about prior to 2017, if we got like if you're already working with a family, and there was another report that came in, we would have to open a new case, even though we were already working with them. In 2017, they made a change that allowed us to just add that new report into our current assessment. It kind of streamlines things a little bit. So that's why you notice the dip in 2017's of number of assessments, because that was the period that they started to allow us to combine those. So since then, it's kind of creeping back up. But that's why that dip is there a few years ago. And then once we screen in reports, there are two different tracks that they can take. Traditional or family investigation is our traditional child protection response. That's where you go with law enforcement, you do recorded interviews, and you make a determination. You know, did they abuse their child or neglect them or not? Family assessment is considered the preferred method to be used in the lesser restrictive cases. And so with family assessment, you're focusing more on how to help the family and make sure that the child is safe and prevent incidents of this nature happening again, versus assigning blame. Did you do this or didn't you? So you can see the majority of our cases, 78% of those were family assessment. 18% were family investigation, so the traditional child protection response. And then 4 were facility investigation. So that includes where there's allegations of abuse or neglect in a daycare or foster care home. The next slide just kind of breaks down what the allegations are in those assessments we did last year. The vast majority is neglect, and so that encompasses a lot. The neglect includes lack of supervision for young children. It includes drug use by parents. It includes kids that aren't getting to school. So that is by far and away the largest, but it also encapsulates the majority of our victims too. You can see with physical abuse falls in second, and sexual abuse with threatened injury applies to there's in statute, if a child is living with a registered predatory offender, or if a registered predatory offender has a child, we are required to go and assess if that child is safe. And so that's what threatened injury means. We don't have allegations that that predatory offender hurt the child. We just have a report that he is living with a child or gave birth to a child, and so we have to go assess the safety of that child. So that's what threatened injury means.
And that's been one of those areas where counties have been frustrated, because if you are a predatory offender and you've had 4 kids, we have to go out on every child that they have subsequently, even though we've been out and we've said the conditions have been rectified, and but it's been one of those areas where counties have been trying to get some flexibility from the state, because for some areas it's been time consuming. We know that they're safe, they completed treatment, they have other kids, we've been there, and they just have not, it's one of those ramifications of the Child Protection Task Force that happened before, so.
Commissioner Blaine?
To that point, Brad and Katie, so when you say you have staff that has to go out and make an assessment where there is a predatory offender living with children, so how often are we going and checking? Is this a monthly thing? Is this once a year? Is it, when there's a new child in the home? Can you explain?
Yep. So when we receive a report, and typically these people are involved with corrections, or they are still monitored by law enforcement as predatory offenders. They do their checks of, if they're residing where they're supposed to be. So if any of those entities find out that there's a child living in the home that wasn't there previously, or a new child is born, that is when we get involved. And so we aren't checking. Once we've done our assessment, if we make a determination that that child is safe to stay there, like Brad said, if they've completed treatment, they're compliant with their probation, but they have a lifetime registry or 15 years even, and they're just kind of waiting for that that time to pass, and we've said it's okay for that child to be there, we don't go back in until maybe another child is born. And then we have to, because we haven't assessed if that brand new baby is safe. We might have assessed the older sibling, maybe the older sibling was a boy, and now this new baby is a girl, and that happens to be the offender had female victims. So every time a child is born, we have to go back in. And maybe we say, no, if he's not safe, and then we would proceed to a termination of parental rights or some other process.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes, sir.
So Katie, in making that assessment, in going there at X point in time, and making that assessment, and staff deems that that child is safe in that environment with that predatory offender, then we're not going to go back there. If there's not another child born, okay, and let's say there's just one child in this example, and the environment's deemed to be safe at that time, we have no reason then or justification to go back into that environment and assess that again unless there is a complaint or direction given by law enforcement. Is that correct?
Correct. If nothing's changed, then we would not go back. The one other circumstance that does frequently happen is we say it's okay for a child to be there because they're participating in treatment and doing okay on probation, and then they quit going to treatment or probation violates them. In that situation, then we would have to go back because something changed. Something changed that might impact the safety of that child. But if there is no changes, if they maintain status quo with probation and continue in their treatment, we would not go back into that house.
Okay, thank you.
Continue, please.
So the next slide just talks about the timeliness to contact with our victims. So again, the state requires that we have the timeframes in which we have to meet with children. So with the family assessment, those are the ones that are the lesser risk. They give us 120 hours. That is their deadline. In 2019, there was only 2 children that we could not see within our timelines. And actually, I wrote in here that we could not locate them. That's a little bit of a misrepresentation because in both of those cases, we knew where those children were. In one case, the child was with the mother out of state and the alleged perpetrator was the father who was here, so we knew that child was safe, but we did not meet our timeline. And in another one, again, we knew where the child was, but we could not reach her in time. So aside from those 2, you can see our response was 41 hours is our average it takes to connect with children when a report has been made and screened in regarding family assessment. For investigation, DHS tells us the 24 hours is the deadline, and we do that within an average of 8 hours. So same for the facility investigation. So you can see our response times. I'm very proud of my staff that they make this a priority to see these kids and see them promptly when there are reports of concerns.
And this was one of those things through the Child Protection Task Force, again, that they really put the lens upon counties and then did provide some funding actually to meet for this particular measure, and we've always done very well, so thank you to Katie and Melanie before her and the staff that do this work, because it is important to make sure kids are safe as soon as possible, so.
The next slide just shows how many child protection case management cases we deal with each year over the last 5 years. And so what that means is after the workers do their assessment, we determine, does this family need ongoing services to make sure that the child is safe? Or were we able to provide some, maybe it was just some minimal things or some barriers to some services or supports? Were we able to provide that in the assessment and close without further working with them? And so the ones where we determine, yes, they need more support or services or attention from us are open for case management. And so these are the numbers over the last 5 years. They remain pretty steady about how many families we've dealt with over the course of the year. As I mentioned, these are the cases where ongoing needs are. In 2019, we opened 70 new cases with families. The majority, as you can see, are children in placement. So 45 of those children are in foster care, either with a relative or in a non-relative home. 6 of those are court involvement without placement. Those are often cases where maybe there's like sexual abuse and we've been able to separate, like if it's one sibling goes with mom, one goes with dad in a different household, we still want court jurisdiction to make sure that everybody's following through with treatment, but we don't need to place them because the family has provided an alternative for that. And then neither court or placement is 19 kids. And that also includes, we have several cases in which a non-custodial parent is going through family court. So let's say the custodial parent has a substance abuse issue. It's not safe for the children. We have the children go with the non-custodial parent, and then they, through family court, go to get custody. So it's not a placement per se, but it is a means to provide safety and permanent safety for that child. The next slide just highlights about the requirements for monthly face-to-face visits. So similar, like Brad said, the DHS really was focusing on the timeliness to contact for assessment workers. They also really focus on monthly contact for case managers. So that workers are seeing every one of the children on their caseloads face-to-face every month. And the state requirement is 95%. And in 2019, when I pulled the numbers, we were at 98.6%. So we are seeing almost every child, almost every month across the agency or across our child protection team. And then the next slide is regarding children in placement. I kind of talked ad nauseum about our placement back in November when I was here. So I just did a brief recap about the numbers, and I apologize that the numbers didn't show up, but we're at 90 for 2019, which was pretty steady to the year before. As of right now, so 90 is for the whole year in 2019. As of right now, just a snapshot of today's time, we have 39 children in foster care. And on the back, it talks about, or the last slide, I'm sorry, talks about kind of our outcomes when we're done with a case or how things come to fruition. 32 of the kids that were in placement in 2019 have returned home, so they went back with their custodial parent. 4 of them did a permanent transfer of custody to their non-custodial, and this is not included in those other cases I talked about that stay out of court. That was done in family court, and they were never in placement. This is for children that were in placement at a time, maybe couldn't be with that non-custodial parent right away, but then that parent did some things and was able to get custody. 2 of the children last year aged out, which means they turned 18. They're adults now, so they are no longer in foster care. 28 children, we did a termination of parental rights, which means they become state ward and they are available for adoption. 5 of the children out of those 77 that we had were state wards all year, and I think last time we talked was those are really deep end mental health kids. Those are kids with really significant issues. Almost all of them have tried to be in an adoptive home where it has failed. They receive a lot of services, and so typically our adoptions move pretty quickly, with the exception of those kids that really just have significant mental health needs. And then at this point, 19 of those kids that were placed in 2019 are still in foster care. So, and then we did finalize 17 adoptions in 2019. So like I said, when kids without extreme barriers, that process can move pretty quickly. I do want to note that after we close our child protection case, before we close, we look at long-term planning for the family. It's not like, okay, we're out, we did all these things and provided you with these things while we're involved, and now good luck. We make sure that if there's ongoing mental health needs, we connect them, whether that's for the child or the parents. The 2 kids I talked about aging out, there is a program that's extended foster care that children are able to be part of up until the age of 21 and continue to receive services where they have state-funded money to help them get through college, get their first apartment, and do those things that typically kids who age out of foster care, they don't have support of a parent to do those things with them. So we do try to make sure that all those things are in place, or as many things as possible, because we don't want these families to come back. we hope that we have given them additional skills and resources so that their lives goes more smoothly and they don't have to encounter us again.
And again, this is, you know, given the times we're in today, this is one of those critical sector functions that we are required to provide irregardless of kind of what's going on around us. And so we are still taking reports, we are still seeing kids face to face when we need to. And so, as you know, it's challenging times where we're at, but this is one of those critical sector jobs. So, and they've done a great job. Katie, Melanie have done a great job with staff. And it is Child Abuse Prevention Month. We're not able to do as many outreach activities because school's not in session, but we still want to recognize that it's important to make sure our kids are taken care of and not experiencing unneeded trauma.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Katie, what a report, first of all. Honest to goodness, thank you. Outstanding. I'm just looking at a couple numbers off your first couple of slides. At 884 cases, maltreatment cases to start with. In my humble math, that's about 73 a month. Blah, 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 figure out how many a week and how many. And then it turns out that out of that 884, there's really 175 that truly become cases. That's 14 a month. You guys have anything else to do? Probably not, I'm guessing. Phenomenal, thank you. It's too bad that we have to have a discussion about this, child protection, maltreatment. I mean, it's too bad, but what a job, thank you.
If I could just make one comment about the ones that were not screened in, we do actually reach out to some of those families who have young kids with a child welfare program we have. So it's not like we are just ignoring all of those other reports that are not screened in. We're thinking about other resources that might benefit the family. We work with public health. We have a public health nurse that could go out and do some visits if they're so inclined. So we're not just ignoring the rest of the ones that are not screened in either. So
Sure.
Staff does a good job of assessing needs, strengths, families.
Busy.
Thank you. Any other
Thanks,
questions?
Katie.
Commissioner Blaine?
Mr. Chair, just one kind of follow-up question here. With all the information that was shared with us by you this morning, Katie, and Brad keeps referencing what staff is doing there, I have to ask, so in Morrison County Social Services, how many full-time employees do we have working on this mission on a daily basis? Or you know, this is their job, is child protection?
Yep. So we have one who does primarily intake, so the one who's taking all those reports. We have two that do the assessments. And well, there's one that kind of does cross between assessments and case management. And then we have 5 other full-time case managers. And then ideally, we have 2 that share the adoption along with licensing. We're in coverage mode right now, but that's our ideal setup at this point. So what is that, 6, 7, 8,
So
11?
10, 11 FTEs that are devoted to this initiative.
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Good job. Thanks, Katie.
No,
All right, if I can go back to the public health report. The
Yep.
first thing on the agenda is I want to talk a little bit about liquor licenses. So for those of us that sat in on Representative Stauber's conversation about what can we at the local level do for our establishments given this difficult time, we went back and talked with our environmental health folks. And what I'm bringing today is I'm proposing that we do not provide responsible beverage server training to our establishments. I think they have a lot going on, a lot of challenges to work through, given the fact they're closed, and requesting that the board allow us to give everybody the responsible beverage server training rate for their license. So we would give them a little bit of a break and not expect them to come. We are gonna maybe try to do some online training for those establishments. So it would be both for the liquor license renewals and the 3-2 sales. If you look at the yellowed ones, those are actually the ones that have come pretty regularly to our responsible beverage server training. The ones that are not highlighted did not make it in 2019. It would be a break of anywhere between $100 and $300 per establishment. The total cost to public health would be about $1,360. And so I thought I would bring this for discussion and conversation because the license letters have to go out and they are due July 1st to pay for their liquor licenses. So I'm bringing this here to the commissioners to have that conversation and see if we couldn't do this for our establishments for this year of 2020 and 21. So that's what I'm bringing forth to the commissioners to have a conversation about and see if would be support for providing that discount to all establishments and not expecting them to come to public health for an in-person training. We also don't know what in-person trainings are gonna be allowed over the next 2 or 3 months, so.
Commissioner Wilson?
I'd like to see us do this, Brad. I think anything we can possibly do for these organizations will be helpful. They're gonna be in rough shape, I think, and so this is a little thing that we could do, so I appreciate that.
Commissioner Jelinski?
And to comment further on that, I don't think, I know you're not saying we're done doing responsible beverage server training. I fully support that. That's a wonderful program. I mean, I participated in several of them. I mean, it truly, I believe it is a wonderful program. However, I can't disagree with Commissioner Wilson. Given the times that we are in, these folks have all been closed, and yeah, I would support us being able to help them out. I don't want to see it go away.
Correct.
By any stretch of the imagination, but.
And hopefully next year at this time, we'll be in totally different circumstances. We can do our in-person responsible beverage server training. And even if we were to create an online conversation around this, I would still prefer that we do in-person because just as you know, Commissioner Jelinski, the back and forth questions that happen between our staff and establishments and law enforcement establishments cannot be framed up in a webinar or a video. So hopefully next year we'll go back to allowing this. But again, not sure when they're gonna be able to open, how much work they're gonna have to do when they get open, and these licenses are due July 1st. And so we want to be cognizant of that and at least provide a little bit of support to our establishments during this very difficult time.
I think a good catch, a good idea on your part. Thanks, Brad.
Commissioner Wincher?
Yeah, again, anybody that owns their own business, especially, the liquor business, it's a tough business.
Yep.
And right now, they're getting really dumped on as far as being open their businesses. And again, I'm always been for small businesses, and in any way we can support to help them make it through these tough times, well, I am all for it. So again, thank you for bringing this up, and maybe and again, you also reiterated, it's for this year only. You didn't say, going
Thank you, Brad, for thinking about doing that. It was a great idea.
All right, it doesn't take board action, I don't think, so we're sending out the letters this week and we'll take care of those establishments and hoping everybody can reopen for those that are not open. That is the hope, so. All right, thank you, commissioners, appreciate that. All right, I have a consumption and display permit for Ramey Store that it needs approval.
Make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion made by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Wincher. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And just to clarify, this is a $250 charge that goes to the state, so we could not do anything about that, so. And then we have two new renewals, a change in ownership at the Suburban Mobile Home Park, and I think the seasonal establishment at Fish Trap Lake are on the same RBA requesting approval.
Gentlemen?
I'll move on this, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Commissioner Jelinski. Second by Commissioner Wilson.
I know we've had more discussion, but I gotta bring it up anyway.
Any discussion?
On this mobile home park, so again, we had the challenges that people weren't paying their fees or their titling, and now we're transferring owner. Is that gonna be part of this? So when they transfer, that they have to be all caught up on their taxes? Am I going around the wrong route here?
That is not a requirement for them to get this license, that they have to have their taxes caught up, and I can't speak to whether or not where their taxes are at.
Well, Mr. Chair, Chelsea can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but the taxes on the actual real estate are paid when there's transfers or likelihood that that's paid, but that's different than the individual park trailer ownership. Thank you, Tab.
I can speak to that. Any title transfer or ownership transfer within the land, the taxes have to be paid. They cannot be delinquent. So as long as they're current within their taxes, and then mobile homes need to be paid in full. So in order to do a transfer of land, taxes would be paid in full.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, that's all I have, Commissioners.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks,
Have a good
Brad.
day.
You too. Next on the agenda, Auditor Treasurer. Welcome, Chelsea.
Good morning, Chelsea.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Chelsea.
Hi. This morning on the agenda, I have a couple things that you see annually. The first request that I have is approval for the county and club trail agreement.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Wincher,
Second.
second by Commissioner Jelinski. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next on the agenda, I am requesting approval for the resolution approving county sponsorship of the Morrison County Recreational Trails Association for state fiscal year 2021.
So move.
Motion made by Commissioner Wilson,
I'll second that.
second by Commissioner Jelinski. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And last but not least, I have a request to approve the warrants.
Gentlemen,
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to pay the bills.
motion by Commissioner Blaine,
Second.
second by Commissioner Wilson to pay the bills. Any discussion? So roll call, Commissioner Blaine,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
myself, aye. Commissioner Wincher,
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That's all I have today.
Thank you very kindly, Chelsea.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Mr. Bukowski.
Good morning, Steve.
Morning, Steve.
Morning, Steve.
Good morning again, sirs. I have two action items in your packet for your consideration. Okay, the first is we have the solicited proposals for our 2020 HSIP 6-inch latex, which is the maintenance work of striping on our highway system, both edge line and center line. 90% of this is funded through federal funds. If it's on a county state aid highway, then the 10% is funded through our county state aid highway maintenance account. If it's a county road, then it comes out of our county funds. We got very good bids, and my request is that the board would award this project to traffic marking services for $211,853.
Gentlemen, could I get a motion? Second?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
Motion made by Commissioner Blaine, second by Commissioner Wilson to approve this contract. Any discussion? Deb, would this be a roll call? Okay, Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire, aye. Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the second action item is again another highway safety improvement project. This is funded 90% with federal money. It is for sinusoidal ground and pavement markings. The majority of this is on CASA 39 from Pierce to the Mille Lacs County line. We received three proposals, and traffic marking service is the low proposal. We'd request the board authorize and award this project to traffic marking services for $138,626.24.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Wincher, second by Commissioner Jelinski to award the contract. Any discussion? So roll call. Myself, aye. Wincher?
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Motion carried.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Steve. Have a good
Thank you
day.
so much,
Thanks, Steve.
You too, thank you.
Oh, calendars.
Is there something for you, Deb?
Yep.
Yep.
There are a couple of things, Mr. Chair. I know Mike Philippi is on his way in.
Okay.
But we have an item for consideration for the building project, as it relates to the building project anyway. There are two different requests that would be funded with bond proceed dollars, and we've talked about them in building committees, but wanted to bring them forward for formal consideration. One is PR number 60, which is the sheriff's office build out in the bulletproof glass and sheathing for that area. As you recall, a significant portion of this is eligible for grant, and the timing of the grant is such that we need to complete the work before we can submit that, but we are hopeful that those dollars come in, and we certainly will advocate for that when the time comes. And then the second is Area C, which is that sheriff's office area and the replacement of those cast pipes. As we've come to realize throughout the building, as we've opened things up, that the sewer pipes are in dire need of replacement, and now's been the time to do that when those ceilings are open. And so the requested change would be to do just that in that final phase of the project. And so where we have done work in the facility, which isn't everywhere, but where we have done work, then that those pipes are replaced, and they should be set for many, many years to come again. So those are the two requests for approval that I have for that building project component.
Mr. Chair, I'll move on this.
Motion by Commissioner Jelinski,
Second.
second by Commissioner Wilson to approve the glass and the cast replacement. Any discussion? Is this a roll, Deb?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Chair, I would just like to comment, it's too bad that we have to talk about this, that we have to talk about bulletproof glass in the world we live in today, but it's because of the world we live in today that we have to talk about bulletproof glass. It's not too bad that we have to talk about replacing the sewer pipes, because as we all know, we're under construction, and I would sure hate to have construction completed and to spring a leak in a pipe that we know we should have replaced. So I fully support that.
Good point. Any other discussion? This will be a roll call. Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Myself, aye.
Did anybody want to hear from Mike? He's here.
As long as he's here. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing all right. If I may, Mr. Chair, I have a question. Maybe this is gonna be similar. You know, with all this virus or whatever the heck is going on here, we built the land services and auditor treasurers to put that safety glass kind of in between there. Am I right or wrong?
Yep, Mr. Chair, we did. We did allow for that to be added in the future. We put in backing or in the header in a space that could be added at a later date.
And my point is, you know, with this going on, is this something that maybe, because we do have an extra buck or two, that we could just finish that off? I mean, just, because now, you know, we're pretty much doing everything, we might as well just get that done if we have the funds. Rather sooner than later. Just a question.
You know, that's a good discussion point we certainly can have over the summer to see where we're at with funding. Part of the component as to why that wasn't added at the time was the business function
Yep.
for that area. I know, recorder's office, for example, they hand large books back and forth sometimes, and they look at things, and then the auditor or the assessor land services area, they work a lot on those computer screens, and so there's a lot of back and forth when it comes to some of that. But you're right, it certainly is the time to talk about whether or not adding that outweighs the safety with it, outweighs the impact maybe to doing business is the right word. So I certainly think it's a discussion we can have, and we'll continue to weigh that and bring you into that conversation as we go.
It is all prepped and ready for it, so all the blacking, backing, and everything.
And again, my point is that time goes by so fast. Before we know it, you'll be done in the sheriff's and the upstairs in the old 70s building, that I would like sooner than later, a quote or something like that going down the road. So yep, if we have a little money there, then we can make a decision on waiting to the last end and saying, yeah, let's do this. Again, you don't have to have it tomorrow, but I think it would be to our benefit to see what it's gonna be in 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, I think we can do that. We can certainly get pricing on it. That's a good idea. Cool. Anything else on the building project as a whole? Things are delayed a little bit with the pandemic and what's happening with that. We do have a 2-week delay at this point in time. We'll see if it's longer, but at this point in time, a 2-week delay for furniture to go in the 60s building. So we are going to make some adjustments, and depending upon when motor vehicle can open or how that looks, we'll maybe start with some existing furniture or kind of mock up something that can work for the time being, depending upon the timing of all this. But otherwise, we're continuing to move forward. Mike's been very good.
Everything else in the sheriff's office, the demo work is continuing forward, flooring and everything else is continuing forward. It's just the furniture contractor did not make the exempt list, and so that portion of it, but we are gonna move them. We're gonna temporary some tables up for them to sit at for the time being to work, so. Otherwise, construction-wise, is going forward, so.
All right, anything else?
Thanks, Mike.
Mr. Chair, I do have another action item, but that's to close the session, so I'd recommend we go through calendars before we do that.
Did we finish that last motion?
Oh,
I think so. Did we? Or not?
that I don't recall.
Well,
Which
let's,
was?
changing the sewer pipes and stuff?
Yeah,
I don't think,
yeah, we voted on it.
he didn't ask for a.
No,
All in favor, vote.
Commissioner Jelinski,
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Lemire, aye, Commissioner Winter.
Aye.
Well,
Motion
now we
carried.
for surely are covered. I don't remember myself.
I don't either. Dang Mike. Okay, next, we're gonna have a closed session?
No,
Calendars.
what dates do we have, Tabitha?
Can we close and then stay closed? No, we gotta open then close.
April 12th through the 25th.
And Commissioner Winter, would you like to start?
Sure. Question I have, again, it's Great River Regional Library, we're doing this webinar. I don't know, do we put them in the paper, because I don't know how they're public hearings, or is it because no one can really call in? I don't know, it's just a question, but yeah, I'm throwing that out there for more discussion. It's like when we have these webinar things, do we have to give out the phone numbers? Because I have no idea. We're doing, I can't remember the name of the webinar that are handling that, but whatever. I just thought I would bring that up for S and giggles. Anyway, moving forward, Great River Regional Library, we're doing that webinar from 5 to 7 from home.
What day?
On the 14th. And then we also, are we gonna have our planning session at 8:30 on the 14th?
Depending upon what agenda items come in, I think we've had a couple to talk about, so I'll weigh those and get your input on whether or not you want to hold.
And then on the
that.
15th, I don't know, I haven't received anything yet. The township semi-annual meeting is still on at 7 o'clock. It's supposed to be here at the courthouse. Again, I don't know if anybody, they haven't, pardon? Well, but I'm just saying, it's here, it's supposed to be here. Now, whether they're gonna cancel
I
it,
haven't
do a
heard nothing
webinar,
either.
I don't know. So that's what I'll, put that down. We're also having a water plan task force.
That's canceled.
That's canceled.
Yep.
That was canceled a while ago.
Okay, so then moving, again, on the 21st, we're supposed to have a board meeting here at 9 o'clock. And that's a meet with the commissioners. Are we gonna do that?
That is postponed.
Okay,
We are
so
going
that'll
to,
be
the Connect with
postponed.
Your Commissioners will reschedule at a later date when we can do it the way we typically have done it.
Okay, all right. And for those 2 weeks, that's all I have on the agenda.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Yeah, and I don't have to add any canceled stuff, but I have a lot of canceled stuff. On the 15th at 5 o'clock, I've got a Hands of Hope meeting scheduled for Todd County. However, I believe that's gonna be some sort of a computer-related thing. I have no idea. Webinar, I don't know. Egg Society on the 16th is allegedly still on. I would look for that to be canceled. On the 23rd, at 12:30, I'm supposed to be having a SECB meeting in St. Paul. I would guess that's gonna be canceled too, but I don't know that. And that's all I have.
Commissioner Blaine?
Mr. Chair, on the 14th, next Tuesday, Amy Kwolczyk and I were to meet with Elmdale Township on questions on the rezoning dealie that we all know about. I believe that we're not going to be doing that in person, and I think Amy will probably reach out to them and have that discussion over the phone if there's communication that way. Other than that, on April 23rd at 6 p.m., Region 5 will have a meeting. I'm going to assume that that will also be via teleconference, as we did our last meeting, if the governor extends the stay-at-home order till the end of the month, which I'm kind of expecting him to, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be via teleconference.
Very good, thank you. Commissioner Wilson?
On the 20th, I got community development at 12:15. On the 22nd, I've got RTCC at 1 o'clock, but that's gonna be over teleconference. And on the 24th, I got Mississippi Headwaters at 9 o'clock, and that's gonna be teleconference too. That's it.
The only thing I have to add is the 13th, Yellow Ribbon, 5:30. All right, gentlemen.
Mr. Chair, could I just add one thing before that resolution's read? I just want to thank Amy Middendorf and her crew with IT and helping us out. I know there was a small glitch in the audio for the live stream, so those listening in or watching us with that, apologize. It takes a little bit to figure all of this out, but the recording will be available, and the recording, we believe, has the audio for the full meeting. And so that is going to be accessible and viewable, and we'll put that out online. Yes.
Did that get fixed during or after, whatever, to make any difference?
It was during the Monroe presentation, fairly early on. It was just
So,
that initial part of it.
If we were to do that over again, no, I'm not pointing any fingers, please, and I mean that. It's all new to everybody. Would we expect that to go a little bit smoother? Okay, and I'm just asking. I'm not trying to, I'm just asking.
And I figured out how to hide my picture there, so that won't be,
Well,
during
you were
the
a
whole meeting.
distraction the whole
So I apologize about that too, but, yes, working out the glitches and all of these is new for everyone, and so the patience, that you have as a board and the public has with us is appreciated. So, we'll figure it out. We're learning with everybody in a short period of time here, so thank you for that. That's the only other item other than closing the session here at the end, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Do I need a motion and a second to close it, or can I close it myself?
You can close it actually with a motion and a second in approving this resolution. It just identifies that, the statute that you can close it under on an annual basis. I appreciate the ability to meet with you five, regarding performance and just make sure I'm on track with what I do here, because it's your work that I do. And so the opportunity to do that is appreciated. So that's what we're.
Jim, could I get a motion and a second for this resolution to
So
close the
moved.
executive session?
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Winters, second by Commissioner Jelinski. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is in a closed session.
Perfect. We'll take 1 minute and we'll figure out our technology.
How about if we take 2 minutes?
That's fine with me.